Ciao a tutti, it's Aram, and today we are here with the one and only
ShamWow.
Sh4mW0W, who plays Mythic Rulers quite a lot. Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm ShamWow. I am the most vocal Mythic Ruler player in the hack community as it stands. Uh, I definitely have first place in that title. I also have the most tops with the deck, but it's only 3, so there's plenty of room for any of you who want to play this deck to overtake me.
Yeah, you're kind of the only guy repping Mythic Rulers, like I was the only guy repping Constellars. So
Yeah, it's a we need to adopt more people into the cult. I mean the fandom.
yeah, the fandom. The thing is, kind of like Mythics don't have the friendliest reputation among new players. But looking at your list, this is the last topping list you have, and there's a couple of odd things. Why compulsory evacuation device? Starting off with this.
Yeah, so I think when I first started playing the deck, I didn't like how you would often reduce your hand size, and, at least when I was first starting out, and so the idea of playing Phoenix Wing, where if you were shrinking your hand size, you would often not have good fodder for it,
Hmm.
would end up dead. Um, sorry, my cat is, destroying my room as we speak. But, I didn't really like the idea of topping a dead Wind Blast or having a
Mm.
trap card that I couldn't use because I had valuable resources in hand. In my mind, it was like if I have a dragon, I wanna have a draw spell for it.
Yeah, that makes sense,
But
especially with only 2 and 2 Blue Eyes engine.
yeah, and I messed around with a lot of non-engine slots. So the compulse could have been bottomless. It could have been warning.
Yeah, I
I
remember
like
that.
compulse the most just because. Yeah, I like to compulse because it's chainable. You can use it on your own cards, and it just outs a lot of the problems monsters for this deck with
Yeah,
virtually no cost. So
Dweller Rhapsody. What else?
crazy box, yeah.
Crazy Bug. And yeah. Speaking about Crazy Bugs, people play it because of Skill Dream, because of Mythic Rose, but I'm honestly not as hot on it right now because just you can always make Draco sack. Like, what is the matchup versus Crazy Bugs like?
uh, it's 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 interesting because 3000 is still a very powerful stat line in Hat, and Mythics have to go into the extra deck out the crazy box. So if you can establish a crazy box, and you've basically forced the Mythic player to basically play into back row.
Oh,
Is the
right, yeah,
idea.
yeah. But
So
now because like with Crazy Box alone is nothing because they can make just Draco sack, but Crazy Box plus bottomless, that's a threat.
yeah, exactly.
All right,
Yeah,
all
and
right.
then your only options then are like summon Redox in defense, or like Soul Charge Blue Eyes if you haven't banished both copies already, or like have a trap.
Hmm. Next up, I was wondering
Uh,
in the extra deck, there's this little level 7 monster besides the Black Rose. It's
Black Dragon.
Ancient Fairy Dragon.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, that was I think like Gravekeepers. I think in one of my
Oh,
previous runs, yeah, I was like, I
so that's
can't
so that's
just
also why
let
the Close Forest.
yeah, I can't auto lose to Gravekeepers like this because Never Valley just
Yeah,
I can't play if I have to banish everything from hand if Never Valley's face up on the field.
yeah. I gotta say
So I was like,
that seems a lot better than playing hands in the side deck.
well, the problem is it's very hard for this deck to make level sevens outside of it exactly Debris Dragon and Card Trooper,
Yeah.
and Necro Valley doesn't let you do that anyway. So in
Hmm.
hindsight, it wasn't the smartest solution.
Hmm.
Hands probably would be a little better in that regard because you can just because Necro Valley doesn't interact with the
Interesting.
hands.
Does Exploder Dragon only destroy monsters?
I'm sorry.
Exploder Dragon. Actually, let's just Exploder
Yeah,
Dragon.
it only destroys monsters.
Oh yeah, it only destroys the monster that destroyed it. It's even more ass than I was remembering.
Yeah, it's a tech choice for sure. It's an idea, but it probably doesn't work very well in practice.
Yeah. What about the
It's
full
under
house?
bottomless though.
Oh yeah.
Oh, so this is funny. I so like I saw Malcat and I wasn't I mean I think Malcat's pretty good. It does the same thing as Full House and it's easier to use than Full House because all you need is for your opponent to attack you.
Hmm.
But I really like the idea of like if my opponent sides in floodgates like Dimensional Fissure and Macrocosmos or Soul Drain against me. In addition to the three MSTs, I also have I have the option to remove the floodgate and then remove all of their set macro.
Ah.
And Full House, even though it's pretty conditional, because you play a lot of chainable backrow or you just play a lot of spells, a lot of times you can just activate an MST, chain Full House. So like if my opponent has D Fisher and 3 set backrow, or 4 set backrow, let's say, I can just activate MST, target a set backrow, and then chain Full House and target the rest, and I basically heavy storm them, and then I can play the game again. It's just like
That's
another.
hilarious.
Yeah, I've done it like once or twice before, and it was awesome. I think I won the game every time I
Yeah.
resolved it.
I bet. It's
Yeah,
just a
so
matter of making it resolve. You know.
yeah, and it could just be Wing Beat. It could be Malcat. I think Wing Beat though relies on resolving like Soul Charge or summoning a ruler successfully, which often your opponents won't let you do.
Hmm.
And then with Malcat, it's you wanna I want it to be able to hit back row after they set it. Because with
Hmm.
Malcat, they can attack first, and then or you Malcat some of their back row, and then if they set more, you're still sort of in the same predicament. So
Yeah, it's not great
I
turn
chose
two.
Full House.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, then moving on to the next list that I wanted to talk about. This is your last list. Now, what was the
Yeah.
reasoning behind all these changes, like Phoenix Swimming Blast, which you previously just dissed, Sacred Sword, Double Trading?
Yeah, so I wanted to. Often I found that like drawing multiple trade in wasn't ideal.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was, for me, in my mind, I was happy if I could resolve one in a game. I didn't really feel the need to draw multiple and then try to resolve two. And so I still wanted 5 draw spells, and I wanted a way to unbrick rulers from hand or field, in theory. And so I chose Sacred Swords. Um, the problem, it's hard because it's a one of that is very situational,
Yeah.
so it's hard to evaluate it in a vacuum. But it's not entirely different from it's just a fifth draw spell basically. It's just the same as like the third consonance or the third trade in. Except that sometimes one, if you banish a ruler off of it, it's a +1, and then sometimes it unbricks your hand and helps you keep your engine going. And then the more I uh the more I strayed away from like Dark Hole and Compulse and tried out Wind Blast and learned how to play with it a little better.
Oh, I didn't even
I
notice you were on Dark Hole on the first list. Oh, didn't
yeah,
even.
I mean, for me I was like when I first built that list, I was like I want high impact non-engine. Like I want sweepers, I want
Oh,
really good chainable removal. And so I was
that makes
like I should
sense.
main Dark Hole and main Compulse because those are the most like versatile and high impact removal that there is. And then as I played with Wing Blast more, I found that one, it helps unbrick in many ways. It helps pitch dead cards that you don't need and that you don't there's no reason really to like say set face down if it's like a bluff.
Hmm.
And then it was just it was way more versatile than compulsory. It's insane. So like
Yeah.
when against artifact decks, if they ignition and they target a back row and you wind blast it,
Yeah,
that is
that's
like an
deadly.
auto loss because yeah, you like you completely blank the ignition and still get to keep your battle phase, and then they're forced to draw artifact. And then, and I've also learned this playing with Wing Blast and Edison as well. It's like it's a card that is super strong and it scales. It scale one because spinning is always almost always better than destroying in Yu-Gi-Oh, but also because it scales if you resolve it multiple times. Um,
Yeah.
it creates basic,
Have you
yeah,
played
it creates like a
Perfect
lot of
Circle
winning
Monarch
chances.
format?
I have, yeah, I've got one top in Perfect Circle, even though that was only
Awesome.
like a 20-player tournament, but it's just
Awesome.
it counts. No, so like if you and like if you watch other people play Mythic Rulers and they have multiple win mass, like it creates a lot of winning opportunities just because draw locking someone sometimes when you have a big board like this deck can do is just if they can't out the board and then you keep denying them a new card on their draw phase, it makes it almost impossible for them to win. It basically creates
Hmm.
like a winning position for you without having to commit more cards. You just spin their set cards multiple times. Um,
Yeah, yeah. I played in a local recently, and I brought Go 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 Sworn, and I won. I won because pretty much the first Phoenix Wind Blast they used, and it put me and it broke my back, and then they didn't use the second one correctly, and I was able to win because of that. But I would have 100% lost if they did. So yeah,
Yeah,
you
just
know.
like sitting on like a Star Eater, and then you just wind blast them. You wind blast whatever interaction they have, and then you
Mhm.
just hit them twice. And like who, no one survives. Like you can't win after that.
Well, it's
It's
six.
insane. So
It's
I'm a
60. It's 6.2K. So technically, yeah, I guess.
yeah.
Well,
So like it's so good. I'm a huge wind blast enjoyer. You should play it.
yeah. So you're seeing the statement on Compulse.
So if I still like Compulse. It's like I think I would play it before I play the third wind blast still.
Mm,
Um,
yeah, makes sense.
just because too many discard outlets is also not good. Although I like three wind blast a lot in like other decks. So
Hmm.
if I had room for Compulse, I would probably fit it. But there are not many flex slots in this deck, in my opinion. Like the Sacred Swords is not really a flex spot if you subscribe to the three trade in two consonants ratio. You just switch it out for trade in.
Hmm.
Kuribandit is like one flex spot. But I like having the third starter.
Mm, that's
Because
great.
often like Trooper and Bandit are like it's like the third Trooper and it just helps you unbrick.
Yeah, I was about to ask
A
your
lot of
thoughts on Kuribandit.
oh yeah, it's sometimes I should side it out more going second.
Yeah.
I've sometimes made the mistake of keeping it while going second and it's gotten me killed because what's cool about it is you can make all of your plays. And then even if they stop you, or if you can make a stable board, you just summon Bandit, and then that gets you your follow up for the next turn. Often, if I'm going second, they have a lot of. My opponent will often have a lot of interruption, and then I'm forced to end on Prey Bandit, and then that leaves me with an empty board. Even if it finds me follow up, I just die.
Hmm.
So going first, it's very effective, and it's even if you don't see it in the opening turns and you only see it late game, it's still worth it to be able to dig for like burial for additional copies of Soul Charge and so on.
It's one of
But
those cards that I would side out in most situations going second. Like Karka or Monk or sometimes Marmalio
yeah, it just dies to artifacts. It's just
Breakthrough.
it's yeah. It becomes unfortunately hat is such that like going first is so powerful that going second and using your summon on a curry bandit to set you
Yeah,
up for next turn is just a little too slow.
yeah. No, you're probably gonna lose if you go for a bandit turn two. Like frankly, I would probably save it for turn four. To be honest, because
Yeah. So
then you bait with something less baitable, the artifacts, because they're probably gonna use them on turn two.
yeah, and I will say like good artifact players should not let you get going with Trooper or Bandit, but
Yeah,
that's like the only insight I will give as to how to play against this deck.
yeah, because
Honestly.
you know, earlier on I would let they go trooper, normal summon, okay, and then I will more attack later and run it over. But frankly, yeah, sometimes just more attack the trooper on normal summon is just is the play, in my opinion. Depends on the
Yeah,
rest on
because
your back
even
row.
if you,
Like if you got a
I'm
bottomless,
sorry.
then depends on the rest of your back row. Like if you got a bottomless, then that's definitely the correct play. For example.
Yeah, like um, you should try to deny. I mean, sometimes it can backfire because if I have follow up in my hand and I lead with Trooper, and then they moral talk, that's one less piece of interaction I have to work with.
Yeah.
It's kind of a mind game of like how much answers do you have to all their possible threats, but um,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like if
there
it's
are,
it's not the most high priority target, but if you have enough interruptions, then it's definitely worth going for, in my opinion.
yeah, I've won. So I think the artifact matchup is pretty favored for this deck. It does turn into a grind usually, and it can be close, but I think there are a lot of positions where sometimes the only reason I was able to win a game in the artifact matchup is because my opponent let me mill, and then they gave me the draw.
Mm,
So that they
yeah.
let me see 4 cards in my deck as opposed to just the one. So
Yep. Well, speaking of not really anything, but what about what are your thoughts on the 3/3 blue eyes ratio? Is you around to
so yeah, that's a good question because I think ultimately the reason why this deck bricks is not because of how many blue eyes or how many whitestone you run.
Mhm.
The deck bricks because you have, in my opinion, you have like 3 separate pieces of your engine. You have the rulers, you have the cards that set up the rulers, uh, and then you have like additional engine pieces or non-engine. And so
Mhm.
for you to be able to play the game as a Mythic Ruler deck, you need to one find a ruler, two have dragons or other monsters of the appropriate attribute in graveyard to banish,
Yep.
and then you need draw cards to help you get to that setup. And so all of those things, the fact that you need like all 3 of these parts to be moving as one is where a lot of inconsistency is created. And I don't necessarily think like going down to 2 blue eyes and 1 whitestone necessarily helps you unbrick, for example. In
Mm.
fact, I would argue like in that case, it makes your draw cards brickier, for example.
Yeah, definitely the
Um,
consonants.
so for me, like the real question with how many blue eyes to run and how many whitestone to run and so on is really just a question of what utility are you looking for. So if you're playing Silver's Cry, which also works with guard, so it's not like you can't play Silver's Cry with 2 and 2. But
Yeah.
um, if you want your mills to be better, if you want to have more consistent cards of consonance, Whitestone, trade-in openings,
Mhm.
um, then go for 3 and 3.
Mm.
Like the brick rate is not going to change because you've increased the chance of drawing like more blue eyes. As
Mhm.
long as you're playing trade-ins, as long as you're playing discard traps, and as long as you find a ruler, you can convert dead blue eyes in hand almost all the time. It's not that big a deal. Some people think it's brickier, but it's not. It's I just don't think that the percentage changes that much because ultimately you just need those 3 parts, right? Because you can brick even on dragon rulers.
Yeah.
You can draw. I've had hands where like I draw 3 out of 4 rulers, and because I don't have draw spells and I don't have shrine, I have very little ways to get set up and make sure I have enough resources in my graveyard uh
The grind game. Yeah.
to keep having pushes exactly. Um, And that's where a lot of their discard effects come into play as well. Like you have to be cognizant of the fact that if you have a water and tidal, you can like set up a really nice soul charge, or you can make a draw spell live, or you can set up multiple rulers for the next turn. But so to refocus on the question, like it's really just a question of what utility. So if you want better mills and if you want stronger or more, if you want more broken openers like Cards of Consonance, Whitestone, Trade-in, go for 3 and 3. If you want to be able, for me, I think 2 and 2 with 2 guard is slightly better, just because being able to dump guard with a shrine and then a ruler and soul charge for a level 8, sometimes um, that's enough to win you the game if you can make like Stardust and establish skill drain.
Mhm.
So
And then there's
it's
also the people that
it's
just played zero consonants.
I'm sorry.
There's also the people that just played zero consonants.
And I mean, it's not an approach I agree with, because I think you take away a lot of the deck speed, and you create a problem where like you have a lot of tuners in hand that basically become normal summons
Mhm.
or discard fodder for Wind Blast. But if you don't see Wind Blast, then they're just a bunch of normal summons sitting in hand. And you can still banish them with rulers, of course, but they get very little utility by comparison. Like if you're in a position where you have to set a guard because you have Whitestone guard and so on in your hand, I feel like that's also just not a it's not very good.
Mm.
The draw spells really like gel this deck together, and I think it's incorrect to analyze the inconsistency this deck can have as a problem with like one segment, one unit of the deck's moving parts. It's really just the fact that it has so many moving parts.
Yeah, I don't think it's very
Um,
fixable.
right. I mean, like all the it's really just a testament to how powerful the rulers are that they can still function with this inconsistency because all the cards that would make them uber consistent are banned, right? Dragon Ravine is banned, the babies are banned. All the cards that would make the deck like as consistent as possible are in the deck already,
Mhm.
basically, because the rest aren't allowed because of how good the deck became because of
Yeah,
those things. So,
even
uh,
afterwards.
but I'm a 2 and 2 advocate. I just think being able to shrine and soul charge, because a lot of times, sometimes your win condition is just establishing Stardust and skill drain, and so if you draw guard and you lose the ability to do that, it can
Mhm.
be it can be devastating. And so I'm personally a 2 and 2 Jordy because I want that utility. But if you
Oh.
want better mills and so on, play 3 and 3. If you want to rely on hands and such to set up your graveyard and to to be able to grind, and you don't really want the speed from draw spells, you can main hands and play less Whitestone Blue Eyes. But I don't think you're going to necessarily lower your brick rate
Mm.
because you chose to play a certain number.
Mm. Speaking of sometimes I just want to establish skill drain. Uh, how often do you feel like Floodgates just are the card that win the game?
Oh,
This.
I think a lot. I mean, the fact that skill drain is just so good. Like a card that basically says your opponent can't use their monster effects is like the difference between and you because once the skill drain is it's like I guess the best comparison I could make, for example, is like Vayu Turbo and Edison. Like the deck summons
I've seen you play
2300
that deck
vanillas.
in Edison. Yeah.
Yeah. And like but once you establish Royal Oppression, your 2300 vanillas become very effective at killing your opponent.
Hmm.
And I mean, there's more to the deck than that, but the fact that the floodgate basically drags every other deck to the floor, and the fact that then you get to summon a bunch of giant beaters that the opponent can't out with most rank fours, for example, except Crazy Box,
Mhm.
is a huge game changer. Uh, it's like it's the floodgates are part of the reason you carry, and
Hmm.
I find it hard to believe that.
You can
I
this
feel like it'd be
barbarous
much
ruler.
harder.
You can this barbarous ruler.
I'm sorry.
You can this barbarous ruler. I don't mind.
I think it's just I think it would be very hard to win. It'd be much harder for you to win the matchups that you're favored in if you didn't play skill drain,
Hmm.
basically. In my opinion.
Yeah, I'm gonna fast forward to. No, never mind. Yeah, I wanted to get to the rivalry, but I guess this skill drain is probably. No, I think I win this game though, because Machina Fortress is pretty good
Yeah.
under skill drain. Um, But I'm gonna get to the stats later. But how do you feel about the deck's matchup spread?
I think I think it has a really strong matchup spread against most decks because the deck wins the same way almost every time, and it's through attrition because every ruler represents like a push
Hmm.
and demands an answer. And so the way you win is you make sure you have more pushes than they have answers. And when you can establish multiple rulers with enough resources in graveyard, and then you have powerful normal summons as follow up, like tree and water.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Once they run out of answers, the game is basically over because then you just push with your beat sticks, and it's very hard to win. Yeah, rivalry is kind of toxic now that I'm watching it live.
You don't even play
But
it anymore.
yeah. Uh, I've tried Vanity's Emptiness for a bit, and I still like Rivalry compared to it because Rivalry going second is like a dark hole for most decks,
Hmm.
regardless. It becomes very hard to, and unlike Vanities, you can still bird I think just flew into my window. Oh my goodness! But you can play unlike Vanity's Emptiness. When you flip it, you can still play under it. So Rivalry is really good.
Hmm.
Oh, I forgot what we were talking about. Was
Matchups.
it? Oh, matchups. Yeah. So I think against the macro decks, Mythics is pretty favorite. I don't think there's one. I don't think there's a spellbook notwithstanding. I think most macro decks, Mythics are pretty favored against just because Field Drain can slow the game down enough for you where uh, as long as they don't have floodgates, you can grind their back row.
Hmm.
Geargia is a little. Geargia has a little more ceiling with Geargia gear, and then they slide into floodgates. So that becomes a little more volatile. It becomes like, do you have the out? And can you play? But even then, skill drain puts in work. I think spellbooks is exceptionally hard if you don't have gas. Just because fate, if you summon a ruler and they flip fate, it becomes very you lose on your follow up. You lose out on a lot of gas just by losing the ruler,
Yeah.
and then you have to waste more resources into fating again. If I ever play Miracle Dig, it might just be because I'm I'm trying to beat spell books. But
There's
I
also
think
Bujins.
Mermail is like oh I think Bujin is just like I mean I think even with Spellbook this is also true for Spellbook. Spellbook and Bujin, you have to learn how to play against them as Mythic Ruler in order to have
Yeah.
more success. With Spellbook, it's like you basically establish more threats than Fate can answer in a single turn, and then once they use the Fate, you have to kill the tower so that they can't recur it. And then that gives you the opportunity to basically make a board that they can't break, and then you push, and then you win. You should win.
Hmm.
With Bujin, it's more that you can't hyper focus on killing the Yamato because if you do that, you will probably lose because you're wasting resources on outing the one monster. And instead, it's just putting yourself in a position where you can out the Yamato efficiently without having to throw like a Draco Sag and then a Big Eye and then a Soul Charge and whatever. And then you just make sure that Susanoo can't destroy your board.
Hmm.
Um, because if you spend time wasting, if you tunnel vision on the Yamato first thing, and then you uh, put all your resources to outing the Yamato, and they flip and they activate Bujin Carnation, then Susanoo just kind of cooks you. Like, and then you have a bigger problem that you need to deal with
Yeah.
because that Susanoo can generate more Yamatos for you to deal with. So it's with Bujin, it's more about gathering resources and then trying to trade efficiently with their threats, which is why, like for example, Colossal Fighter is like amazing in the matchup because
Yeah.
you can you can force out even if you force them to burn hair. What's nice is that Colossal Fighter doesn't die by battle, so if you have Colossal Fighter skill drain up, even if they have Crane, Colossal comes back and kills the Yamato anyway.
Hmm.
And so you force them by setting up those trades, you make them instead waste resources, and then you grind them out as
Damn,
you
I
do
should.
with most other decks.
Damn, I should have grabbed the Bujin replay.
Yeah,
But
that one versus Kazan was winnable. I I didn't see. I was trying to calculate in my head the Star Eater line, but I couldn't do it, and so I lost because of it. But that's what makes it. I mean, the fact that that was possible is what makes it rewarding. Oh,
Mm.
I played so bad in this. I can't watch this. No, I'm just kidding. But
You wanna skip this?
yeah.
You
So
lose in this one. Okay.
no, 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 no. I think it
And it's
showcases
it's
like
just background footage. Wasn't gonna comment on it.
no, no. I understand, but like this showcases how like you need to. Because here, like, um, if I don't find gas, which I guess I don't. If you like throw your resources at fate, um, like here, I think I dark hole to clear the so that I can resolve bandit and not get faded,
Hmm.
which ends up kind of working out because I get burial. But the fact that he's able to basically recur the fate and gain advantage from tower, and then he
Yeah, it
finds
just
pro off duel.
outruns you.
Yeah, it's just like so. I don't know. I mean, I can't say that it was wrong to throw redox at there, but like it's more just that it's very hard to play after this. Soul Charge, though, for example, is like wonderful because now with Soul Charge, I can out the last back row. I can summon the 2 dragon rulers from my graveyard,
Hmm. Well,
and then I'm set. So like, if you can go wide against Spellbook, you're doing okay. It's when you can't go wide that
oh,
it becomes a little complicated.
yeah, yeah, but yeah. Spellbooks can just get overwhelmed sometimes. That's kind of the deck's main weakness. Um, there was something that I was thinking about. When I played Barbarous Ruler, that I think I brought it to a tournament, and something that I noticed was that without skill drain you can't out indestructible monsters, and I hope that didn't make it to the video because that would be fucking annoying. I'm gonna fucking mute notifications.
Oh, that's okay. But
Uh,
yeah, like that's. I mean, I
Sorry, I got
open to the backrowless approach, but I just think you lose so much ceiling if you don't have
no,
skill drain.
no, that wasn't really the question. It was more like about. I found out that without skill drain you can't out stuff like Zen mains and and so we can to play Alsei, and we found it really good. What's your thoughts
Yeah.
on Alsei?
That's a good question. I saw Allison play Alsay with some success. I just find so like the deck's flex slots are like some non-engine cards and some monster choice, some normal summon choices in the main, and then a lot of the other flex slots come out of the extra deck.
Hmm.
And I found it hard. I always find it hard to justify. Like there are situations in which I want Alsay because they'll out my skill train, and then I have to waste cards outing like Ascend mains, or like
Yamato.
one time I played against yeah, or Yamato. One time I played against like an Inzector deck, I think in Fire Water. I was playing Mythics, and he like summoned Fortune Tune, and then and I couldn't out it, and that was extremely aggravating to deal with. Because then he stalled with Fortune Tune and then like popped my board with Dragonfly.
Yeah.
That was painful. But so
There's
like
so like there's Alsei
I'll
for like
say
Fujins,
yeah, I
probably.
mean, it has utility. It's just hard to set up without Soul Charge or Tree and Water. It's hard to set up level eights, and usually it's more like you want Alsay in the very niche cases because um, if you have skills drain up, you can out
Or,
most threats with Draco Sack, and then uh, if you uh, if you don't have skills drain up, you have Big Eye, you have other options. So
hmm.
hard to say for sure
Well, there's
what you
also
like.
right now people aren't playing spellbooks very much. But
Yeah.
if people started playing spellbooks more, what about Angel of Terra?
Yeah, I think I feel I've tried it once. I think in that Ultra Plant replay I summoned it. I don't know what happened to it. Um but I found that like if they have Priestess, it's just terrible because you just die. Like they just pop
Yeah,
it. So you need like skill drain up or something. But But I mean, in the same way that Colossal Fighter like helps the Bujin matchup, Angel of Zero can definitely help the Spellbook matchup. And if I would recommend like if you are having trouble with that matchup, or you feel like you need a monster you can stall with in case you don't have the gas to go wide, I think Angel of Zero is a fine choice. I
Mm.
think it's also a good choice in like matchups where they side Soul Drain or Macrocosmos, or sorry,
Yeah.
not Soul Drain, D Fisher or Macrocosmos against you because I mean you can still establish a monster under it, which is better than nothing.
Yeah. Well, this was a game versus that. I think you sent another game versus that. Do you want to comment on that? Because I wanted to ask you about how do you play versus backrows? Pretty much.
That's a really good question, yeah, and it's a I think I I don't know how I came to this, but it just kind of clicked as soon as I started playing the deck. But um, I mentioned earlier that each Dragon Ruler is a push, and it each Dragon Ruler you summon demands an answer sort of immediately. Because even if and obviously that makes sense because you can't let just a giant beat stick that can overlay for rank sevens just sit on the field and attack your monsters and keep attacking your monsters and plussing over them. So the the key there's a lot of general rules of thumb at first, but the key concept to playing Mythic Ruler successfully and outgrinding your opponent is thinking about how many pushes you have and comparing that to how many answers you think they reasonably have. So for example, I this is a post side game, so I might consider Crow that he has Crow in hand. But
Hmm.
I see that he has three back row, and I don't have many pushes outside of my one Dragon Shrine. And so because of that, I don't try to force uh I don't try to force a ruler into four back row. I wait until I have more resources, like Mythic Tree and Water, Tempest, and then I decide, okay, I'm gonna I think I misplayed though. I think I should have gone for Tree Water, but now I have Soul Charge. So you basically wait until you have more pushes than they have back row, and that effectively allows you to play through
Mm.
it. And then here, like he shows that his two back row were artifacts all along, right?
Yeah, that
And he
was
makes
bad.
Durendal, which is tragic, but I managed to get through it. And so now he only has two possible back row, and I have like multiple Dragon Rulers in Graveyard,
Hmm.
right? And I have Burial as follow up. So even if he stops this blaster, which he does, now I have Burial, and he's run out of answers. So like that's like the case in point of how you play. You try to establish or gain resources with Trooper, Bandit, Shrine, and once you have more pushes than they have answers, or once you think you have more pushes or follow up than they have answers, then you start forcing the back row and testing it so you can make reads on it
Hmm.
on what they have, and then you outgrind them.
Yeah, I feel like
Like
that's
here, he's
very
side
important
topping.
when playing rulers, learning first how to read backrows and play accordingly.
Yeah,
Because especially like bottomless.
yeah, and I think the trap some people fall into when they first learn that is that they think you have to play passively to deal with the threats. And no, it's like making reads on macro and grinding through macro means you force threats. You like have to aggressively make a push.
Hmm.
So for example, here he has four back row. I have Tempest and I have Shrine, so that's about two pushes. And then I draw a Degree Dragon. So now I
Yeah,
have Black Rose that forces an answer. So I don't need to rush. I can attack with Trooper. But if I want to make
yeah.
progress,
For
I
example,
have to.
this will be a perfect example of what we were talking before. Just normal summon card trooper. Okay, a sanctum. You have the bottomless. They have the bottomless, and yeah, they have torrential. So like that, this will be a great spot to the trooper.
Yeah, and I think I hit. If you check my graveyard, I think I hit a ruler off the Trooper mill. No, I
Ah,
didn't. I whiffed. Okay. That's okay though. The fact that he lets me keep milling helps me push through because now I
okay,
get
okay.
the plus with Whitestone. I think I have a discard trap set, so that sets me up in a position to like respond to one of his back row, and that's part of what makes Wind Blast so good as well. Like the fact that you can spin a back row so that they can't deal with it,
Hmm.
but so that you have one less answer, right? Interruption you have to worry about. is like
Hmm.
super effective. But yeah, see, now I have multiple rulers. I have Shrine for the third ruler, and then I have this Black Rose threat that he can't deal with, and then I mill the fourth ruler off of Trooper.
Hmm. Yeah, here he let
So,
you mill 3 for no reason.
yeah, so now I have like a ton of pushes into 5 backrow, and then I draw Burial. So
Hmm.
now so now I'm forcing him. Once you have like all these pushes, now you need to start forcing them so that you can play the game.
By the
So
way,
now
your
he's
audio
down
is
to two
going a
back
bit
row.
bad.
I'm sorry.
Your audio is going a bit bad sometimes. By the way.
Oh, I'm sorry. So now he's down to two back row, and I have Shrine and a ruler. So now he has
Mhm.
the Beagle tech, Moral tech, and he stops my push. At the very least, I can plus with the title. Oh, and then he soul charges. Damn. Uh, but now I still have plate. So here, oh my gosh, what a wonderful draw. But I still have like 3 rulers, and I burn 2 of them for no apparent reason. I
Well,
think I
nice
lose
to
this game.
autoplay this.
But
Well,
but
anti shoutouts to Duck. Fuck Duck. If you know why, you know why.
if you know why, you know why. But
You.
that's basically the same. It's always how many making sure you have enough pushes that you can beat the back row. And it doesn't necessarily need to be depending on like the cards you have, like Kuribandit or sorry, Soul Charge, Burial. It doesn't necessarily need to be I need to have he has 4 back row, I need 5 pushes to play.
Hmm.
You have to also realize that your rulers can come back on the next turn. And
Yeah.
so if you force the issue this turn, you might be able to outgrind them next turn because the back row decks usually only draw 1 additional card. And so if you have multiple rulers and you force out most of their cards now, and then they only draw another trap or one more trap on the next turn, then your rulers allow you the opportunity to come back. Um,
Yeah, because like at the end of
but
the
it
day,
takes
there's only the banished cards that like matter permanently, and even then, you have burial. So.
right. So and then by forcing back row by making the pushes and then seeing what your opponent does, that's how you make reads. So for example, he flips compulse here, and that gives me the read that he doesn't have bottomless. He shows the bottomless anyway, but um because like I see that he has compulse, for example, or he uses compulse, I know he doesn't have an out to Stardust, right?
Hmm.
Anymore. At least in theory, he does not have he has one of the only outs to Stardust is compulse, and now he used it, so I'm okay.
Hmm. Yeah, ironically, it's a lot
And
easier
then
to read the back rows versus good players versus bad players.
yeah, because they play the same. So Duck I think played pretty well here. I just had enough pushes to outgrind him, and then once I established Stardust, that means a lot of the especially in the hat matchup, a lot of their back row becomes very useless if Stardust hits the field
Yeah,
because
for
how are
real.
they supposed to moral talk you?
Yeah,
Right, and that's where
Stardust is
like
just the goat versus that.
yeah, and that's where skill drain also comes in, right? And like Stardust because if skill drain makes it so that 2 or 3 of their traps don't do anything, then if you only have 1 or 2 traps to worry about, then you're free to play the game and continue the grind.
Hmm.
So it's always that's the basic sort of algorithm. Just how many pushes in comparison to answers do you have? And then the rest is like taking stock of what's left in your deck. Uh, drawing before you mill, and then doing random milling before targeted milling, just because that will you want to increase the chance you hit something, you hit engine, and most of your deck is spells. But yeah, like it's I feel like I've repeated this concept 3 times over or like 5 times over because I'm very good at rambling on and on, making a bunch of tangents.
Yeah, kind of like me.
But yeah, fair. But as soon as you've outgrinded them, once you've outgrinded them, then you have to play more aggressively and try to take back the win. Because if you play a lot of oh yes, I was trying to mention, if you start playing passively out of fear of backrow, it becomes almost impossible for you to win, or you lose out on the opportunity to win.
Mm.
Uh, and then I guess with respect to like respecting certain cards like Crow and so on post side, the other aspect is this is why making reads is such a valuable skill because uh, if you respect everything, then you are basically setting yourself up to lose no matter what. You
Yeah.
can only really you have you force back row in order to make reads through at first a process of elimination. Then based on that process of elimination, you try to narrow down the range of what they have. And then you look at your resources and you think about what can I actually play around, right? Because if my opponent has Crow and I have to make a play or I lose, and I have no way to play around Crow, it doesn't benefit me to not go for the play. You just have to hope at that point you just have to hope they don't have it.
Mm.
Because if they don't, then you can come back, right? But if you respect the Crow to quote unquote play around it, but you're already in a losing position and you need to take action, then you're just you're resigning yourself to losing either way, right?
Well, yeah, that's kind of
Rather than taking the chance on the play that lets you win.
yeah, that's kind of like about being able to tell when you gotta go for plays even when they might punish you, and when you can kind of just play a bit more conservatively. But
Exactly, and it's I don't. I guess what I'm trying to say is like don't try to play around everything.
mm,
Practice making reads. Practice narrowing down the possibilities of what they may have, and then only play around what you can actually play around,
mm,
right? Don't play around what you can't play around, what you can't play around, even if you fear that it's there. Because if you can't play around it, um, then you're probably going to lose anyway if you're hoping that you don't get outed,
mm,
right? Like, does that make sense?
yeah,
If I if I think my opponent has bottomless and but they have like a dweller on the field and I need to out this dweller in order to play the game, I can't respect bottomless and hope I draw an out to the dweller. I mean, you can do that, but realistically, if you do that, you are probably going to lose. Um,
yeah,
it's just you have when you yeah you
yeah,
play around what you can actually play, what your hand actually allows you to play around, and your graveyard resources actually allow you to play around.
yeah,
You don't play around what you cannot play around anyway, because that doesn't benefit you,
yeah.
basically.
Well, the thing that makes Mythic so hard, in my opinion, compared to other decks is that like reading through backrows and playing accordingly. Every deck kind of needs to do that. I have to do that with Constellars. But the thing that stops me
Yeah.
from being able to play Mythics is that why? How do you decide whether to go for like a rank 7, a rank 8, a level 8 synchro? Because like a lot of times you are playing into backrows and you have different lines that go in completely different places and that play around different backrows. What's kind of the thought process?
That's
If you can
so.
simplify it.
Yeah, part of the problem is that it like requires context. But let me see if I can find this replay. If I can see in this replay. So it always like it first you have to position yourself so that you have follow up if your play gets answered. I think is the first thing I factor into the decision making. Um, will I have dragons in graveyard to banish if my play gets stopped here?
Hmm.
How am I gonna win this game? Like, do I wanna what is my plan for next turn or for the following turns? Do I want to end on Stardust to try to protect my skill drain or my back row? Or do I want to make Draco Sack so that if they set more back row, I can pop it?
Hmm.
Um, like it's funny because the hands where I have very few options, I find are the hands that are easiest to play because it's often like,
Well, yeah.
well, my win condition is this. Yeah, my win condition is this, I only have one choice. So I only have like a couple choices, and one is decidedly better because it lets me, etc., do etc., etc. The hands where you have multiple options are the hands where you theoretically should probably win. Uh, but it takes so much into account. But the it you want to make the board that will be most resilient to your opponent's answers and that will guarantee follow up for
Hmm.
you for on the next turn, or at least give you enough turns that you can find follow up.
Yeah, there's
So
also about breaking boards. Just
yeah,
breaking
so
boards.
like if Felgrand, if sitting on Felgrand at least buys me time, whereas Stardust can easily be outed, even if it would protect skill drain, I'm gonna lean towards uh Felgrand, right?
Hmm.
If if I'm bricked and the best I can do is Stardust drain and hope that I can stall with that long enough to win the game, then Stardust drain becomes the play, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
so
makes sense.
in a vacuum, it's really hard to answer. It's easier in context, and if we were like looking at an actual position and walking through the thought process, but um, you have to evaluate what future turns are going to look like, what's going to give you the longest amount of time if you're in a position where you need a stall, and you need to think about what your win condition is. Um,
Mm-hmm.
is if I have to play, for example, into a dweller, then most plays I have to go for involve killing the dweller and from there like surviving so that my opponent can't kill me, um, even if I outed the dweller. So that might bias you towards, for example, making Felgrand over Dracosac or Stardust, for example. Um, or like if my opponent has resolved Soul Charge and they have a bunch of monsters, maybe I don't try to break their board. Maybe I try to cheese them with Giant Grinder, for example.
Hmm.
It's very dynamic, and that's what makes the deck really fun and interesting to me. Is a lot of the problems of like what to go for and what to do change depending on the amount of options you have in your hand. And
Yeah.
I often make a play, and then in hindsight, I immediately realize that there were so many better options I had that I missed out on.
Hmm.
Um, Let me see. Mermail is an interesting matchup because I find that depending on how much gas either one player has, it becomes it's very volatile. So here I think I don't have much gas. I'm just trying to find resources and survive.
Hmm.
And then he goes for this tidal gunplay.
Yeah.
Um, and I guess your question also ties into playing to maxi. Like sometimes you have to, in order for you to give yourself the best chance to win, you have to give your opponent the draw, right? He goes for Bahamut Trite, which is really hard for me to deal with at this point, outside of like maybe Big Eye.
Yeah, because 2800 is a big defense stat.
Yeah. So he max sees me, so I don't want to overcommit. So I just try to make Blader
Mm-hmm.
because if his back row is Sphere, it doesn't matter regardless.
Mm-hmm.
And if I kill at least a Bahamut with Blader, it gives me one more turn to deal with the Trite, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I Mind Crush him, so I completely cheesed him with Mind Crush on Allure, calling
Yeah.
controller. But
Yeah, I was about to ask about Minecraft because it's not a card that's played very often, but I didn't want to digress too much. But what's the deal with Minecraft? What's the deal?
it's it's good against Spellbook because if you Mind Crush their Blue Boy, or if you Mind Crush what they search off of Blue Boy, or uh, you hit the Priestess, it's very hard for them to play because they no longer have a spellcaster on field.
Mm-hmm.
I actually picked up the Mind Crush technology playing Meadowlands for a bit.
Meadowlands?
Um, Meadowlands format. It's
Oh,
I think YCS 2013. It's like the Mermail Tier Zero format,
yeah.
and
Not
like
not one I
the
like.
topping list sided Mind Crush for the Spellbook matchup. So, and then
Oh.
it also hits yeah, and then it also hits Mermail,
Mm-hmm.
because it's like a inferior version of debunk, but it still gets the job done.
Yeah.
Um,
What about
like hitting
Fujins?
Megalo. Oh yeah, it's great against Bujin, right? Well, Mikazushi activates some damage steps, so it's not that great. But
Yeah, it's mainly for
calling
Crane.
Crane, for example, yeah, calling Crane is good. It lets you clear the Yamato, or it forces the hair, for example.
Yeah,
But
you don't even care too much about the discard. It's not the end of the world for this deck, at least if you end up calling Crane and they have honest, like they probably do.
oh, so here I think, yeah, Soul Charge. To your previous question about like what to do, Soul Charge is like the epitome of trying to figure out what's the best play with Soul Charge, especially when you have a lot of targets in graveyard and a lot of life points to spare.
Yeah.
But for example, my win condition here was he can't deal with multiple D6 unless he has Dark Hole. But in that case, I can hedge for that with Stardust. So
Mhm.
if I establish this board and clear his ability to make Exciton or 101, I could win. And then here I draw Soul Charge again, drawing cards. I think
Oh,
I know he's on Sylvan. No, I don't.
hmm.
Hmm.
Oh, I have one last question before I close out this. So, if you have
Yeah.
any other thoughts that you wanted to talk about, what the fuck is that Daniel doing here? And sure, Beam. If you have any other thoughts that you wanted to share, please feel free to do so.
Yeah, so I would say uh the reason I got into the deck was because I thought the Dragon Rulers were super cool
Mm-hmm.
and their effects are awesome, and like having the puzzle of like what to do with each of them because they're so powerful was very interesting to me. And so if you like the Dragon Rulers, if you want to be able to use them, then don't let what people say about the deck being inconsistent or being hard to play and stuff deter you from playing the deck. Just play the deck and have fun playing with the cool monsters. Uh,
Yeah, you'll get better.
inconsistency, yeah, and inconsistency is like always going to be a struggle that the deck has. There's not, I don't think there's a magic solution for it, but uh, with good technical play, you can overcome the problem of the inconsistencies uh, and be able to win and top with the deck.
Mhm.
So then, with respect to improvement, if you're like very overwhelmed by the idea of trying to grind macro and you aren't sure how to do so, uh, I personally just recommend watching replays, maybe even like screenshotting the positions you find yourself in where you're struggling on what play to make, and then just having other people help talk through what they're thinking and what their decision making is.
Mm.
Um, because that's like playing a lot of games is part of how you learn, and then listening to experienced players with the deck sort of talk through how they're making reads, how they're positioning themselves with respect to macro, what options they're thinking about first and foremost with a given hand.
Mm.
That will help. That will help improve your own decision making. And then once you learn sort of the basic rules of thumb, the deck becomes a lot easier to play. So again, don't let the myth of like the deck being super hard to play dispel you.
Well,
Just play the deck. It's
well,
fun.
well, you've answered my question pretty much. I was about to ask how to improve as a Mythic player, but I was thinking, you know, sounds like if you started a YouTube channel, that would help the Mythic player base grow.
That's right. That will help the cult fandom. I mean, like that'll help it expand.
Yeah, yeah, the fandom, the
I
fandom.
I would have to contain the yap though if I made a YouTube channel at some point in my career.
Well, I'm trying to yap more, so I don't necessarily agree. So I don't yap enough in
Fair,
my
fair.
videos, I feel.
The yapping is good. It helps. I think like sometimes it's if it's a little too disorganized or tangential, like my apps can be, it can be very taxing, I think, to watch. But you also just get a feel for like what people really emphasize are trying to emphasize or what they're really honing in on. And when you get, especially from like good players, once you get a feel for what their emphasis is, it's very insightful
Hmm.
to listen to the app.
That's it from me. That's it from Sh4mW0W. If you like, join the Discord, subscribe, ring the bell. Any shoutouts?
Shout out to the hack community for being kind and welcoming. Shout out to Aaron for being very supportive. Shout out to anyone who's ever asked me a question in the Mythic chat. I'm always happy to answer questions if you have any. Yeah, just shout out to my wife, my cats, and to the game of Yu-Gi-Oh for being a continuous source of joy and intrigue.
Yeah, that's all. See ya.